Okay, let's make the transition. Is this where it begins? Okay. Three. Three phases. All right, we'll start at phase one. Okay, now let's just go over the materials needed, or covering the materials needed will also cover the phases. So it just makes sense to cover both at the same time. So phase one is what I call the manual phase. Manual phase is where it's just gonna be you and the Bible. There's nothing fancy about it. There's no technology involved. It's manual because it's you, hands on. And for this phase, you're gonna need, of course, a Bible. You could use a online Bible, electronic Bible. I would say do that later. Do that once you're familiar with the tactile touch of flipping pages, and there's just a relationship that you could just have with a book once it's in your lap or in your hands, or you can smell the pages. It adds to the learning process, because what we have to understand is that our senses are nothing more than just bio conductors of information. Okay? We learn by using all of this. Well, the most powerful form of learning is using all the senses. Some people, all they need to do is hear something and they got it, right? Some people, all they need to do is see something and they got it, right? Some people, all they have to do is touch something and they got it. However, it's more powerful when you combine all the senses. Matter of fact, it becomes real. So, keep that in mind. The electronic Bibles and the online Bibles cannot replace the relationship you can have with a physical Bible. So it could be called the physical phase, but I'll just call it the manual phase because you're manually doing the study. And I'll explain later. Colored pens or pencils. Okay. This is going to be for marking up the Bible. It's going to be for a color system that I'm going to explain later. And then a pen. You might need a pen to jot down some notes, or you might need a pen to underscore something in the book that stands out to you that you don't have a color for. Next. Can I do that? Let me see. Would that work? Okay, that works. Very good. Phase 2. Materials needed for phase 2. Phase 2 is also the digital phase. Now, what do I mean by the digital phase? The digital phase is where we can leave behind the manual phase, and then everything we've learned or gleaned or separated from the manual phase, we then import or input into the digital phase. If that makes sense, I'll explain. What you see here on the screen, right there, it says Ruth 1, is, well, let me go with the materials first because I'll get to that. What you're going to need is either Microsoft Word or another word processor that is comparable to Microsoft Word, because the table outlay that I created here in this is what I call a grid. I used to call it a matrix, but now I just call it a grid because I didn't want to get conflicted with the movie. But this grid here is a very complex table. I mean, it's not like Excel spreadsheet or nothing like that. But the table column and row combinations that I use is kind of more complex than your amateur start out word processor. Because I couldn't even do it on WordPad, or a table like this couldn't even be done in PowerPoint. So there were some limitations when I ran into other software to try to imitate or duplicate that table. All right. So I'm not trying to show off or brag, anything like that. So I created a table too complex for modern software. No, it's not that at all. It's just I'm letting you know up front. All right. So most computers, especially Windows-based, come with Microsoft Word anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. All right, so this is the grid template. What you see here, let me see. Can you see this? I'm circling it right now. I don't know if I lost my pointer or not. But that is the grid where all the information that comes from the biblical portion or the manual portion of the study, you fill in those columns with that information. I'll go into that later when I get to the digital phase, which is phase 2. But today I'm just going to focus on the manual phase. I don't want to get too far off into that, make this video longer than it has to be, and tax people's attention and ear listening abilities for too much long. Okay, so anyway, behind that is what you see is you're looking at a screen. Behind that is a screen for eSword, and that's your next material needed. Bible Hub, eSword, or your favorite Bible software. Now, I chose eSword because it's powerful and is also free. So a lot of people can get that. I mean, everybody doesn't have $600 to shelve out for Logos. Now, that's the Bible software that I have. I don't really use it because it's like, man, the features are overwhelming. They really are. I mean, we're talking, these guys have cataloged all the ancient manuscripts where you can look at them. You can actually look at the manuscripts in the program and click on them, and definitions for the words that you see in the language that you see pop up and all this kind of stuff, all kinds of notes and things like that. So it's just really powerful, and it's beyond the scope of what's necessary. Okay, and of course down here you see pages of, that's my Bible that you see right there in that third picture, smaller picture. Okay, pages for my Bible. that's what you're going to need. You're going to need the marked Bible, you're going to need Microsoft Word and the grid, and then you're going to need Bible Hub or eSword or your favorite Bible software. That's for phase 2, the materials are needed. Phase 3, this is the summarization phase. All right, this is the phase where it all comes together. I mean, it's like you start at the base of a mountain. You get to the tip of the mountain with the grid. Now you're coming down to the bottom of the mountain, because what you're doing is you're going to summarize all this information into a PowerPoint presentation. That's what you see here with this brother right here. That's the PowerPoint presentation. And I'll show that in as phase 3. I'll get to that then. Like I say, today we're just going to focus on manual phase. Okay, so for that, you're going to need completed grid, PowerPoint presentation, and a template, or PowerPoint presentation template that I also created for this summarization phase. Now, all this stuff I can make available to anybody, free of charge, of course. And but it will be empty. I can tell you that. It's going to be empty for you to fill in. All right, let's get started. Okay, so step 1 of the manual phase is prayer. Okay, once you approach the scripture, I have my method of praying. As you can see, those of me and my boys, we put our face to the ground at some certain point in the prayer, right? I mean, you pray like this. If you pray like this and you pray like, whatever, right? As long as you get through, all right? And then as you do this, I'm saying prayer for a whole entire process. I'm saying prayer for you to step into your metaphysical self, for you to get in sync with the harmony of nature or whatever, so that you can basically take your mind out of the state it was in and put it in this state where you have intention. You have this intention to get so that you can ascertain divine information, because you get much more out of it than when you just coming home from lunch or coming home from work or just got finished at the park and you pick up your Bible and start reading it. Your brain ain't going to be tuned in, So take that time to tune in, tune out, and prepare yourself for what's ahead. Step 2 is read the entire chapter. Now, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about you're reading this book like you're watching Atlanta Housewives, one episode at a time, right? And you can't wait till next week for that next episode to come out. So we're just going to focus on this one chapter. I don't know how many chapters you plan to read at a time. All right. I'm not going to include my regimen in the steps because for me, I read 5 chapters at a time. You understand? And that's how I do it. 5 chapters at a time, the next 5 chapters, the next 5 chapters, And so that's how I approach it. But still, it's 1 chapter at a time. And when you read that 1 chapter, just you and that 1 chapter, that's it. 1 chapter. Get through that, then we worry about the next chapter once we get there. But let's stay here and focus and be here, right? Don't try to read anything into the text. Don't try to force it to say what you want it to say. Read it like this is your first time. Pretend that you know nothing about this book other than what it tells you about itself. If it helps, use another translation. I have some translations I would recommend people of the faith read, and books that I recommend you put the hell down. Throw in a trash can, fireplace, what have you. I know there's the superstition about, oh, that's God's word. That's God's word. Yeah, I'm leave this out this video. I have things to say. Trust me, I have a mouthful of things to say about that too. All right, so pay particular attention to the information being presented in each verse. Pay attention to that information. Grab hold of that information. Retain that information. Isolate, specialize, highlight that information. And that's what the other portions of this phase are going to do, are designed to do. Because I can read the whole chapter and say, oh, wow, about everything that was in there, right? But unless I can remember it, unless I can go find it, it's of no use to me because pretty soon I'm going to forget it anyway. Some of the stuff stands out so spectacularly that you will retain it. You will remember it. But I swear to you, when it comes to connecting dots, it's important to pull it out the page. And that's what the other phases are designed to do. Focus on the 6 dimensions of knowledge. That would be who, what, where, when, why, how. Okay? When you look at knowledge, these 6 questions have to be answered for full understanding. And believe it or not, the Bible answers all of these questions every time. Every time you go into, I can't say every chapter does answer all 6, but you have to pay attention to these questions when you're reading each verse. Which question is it answering? Because once you understand what question is answering, then you can put the pieces together. Then you can fill in holes, you can fill in blanks, and sometimes you might even have to fill in these blanks because it may be hinted at, but not obviously in your face, over your nose, type thrown at you. You're going to have to use some common sense and wisdom to figure this stuff out. And then, by using that method, you could dispel a lot of this BS that's being invented. People say the Bible's saying this and the Bible's saying that, and you find out most of the time, more often than not, they haven't paid attention to the six, or one of the 6 dimensions of knowledge that's actually presented, but they haven't found it. They haven't paid attention to it. All right. So read each verse at a time, 1 verse at a time, and then once you read that 1 verse, digest it. I don't care how long it takes you. Once you read that 1 verse, take some time, mark up that verse, pull out the information in that verse. Okay. Accept what the book says and what you see. Accept what it says and what you see. If that's what you see, then that's what it says. It doesn't say what your pastor or your camp leader or what your rabbi or what your mores say if it's different than what you see on the page. It's not saying that, what he's saying. And that's the true sign of somebody trying to manipulate you. That's the true sign of somebody looking at you and you're nothing but a lip-smacking sheep for lamb chops later or for a wool coat later on. You are to take this thing into your own hands. You are the controller of your own destiny. trust yourself to be able to read this book and get what scholars get out of it. Or you have the access to the tools that the same scholars use. Because if you got Google, man, you got most of what we have. I mean, I'm not include myself in that bunch, but you have most of what those who have dedicated a lifetime have to cipher the book. All right, so don't look at yourself as I'm just somebody, I'm just a nobody, and these guys been doing this all their lives, so I better listen to them because I don't know what I'm talking about. No, you got the ability to do that. Have confidence in yourself that you can do that. All right, so anyway, trying to connect with the characters in the book psychologically. Try to look at them as if they're your uncles, you're your aunts, they're your nephews, they're your cousins, they're your enemies. Look at them as individuals, personalities. Don't look at them as if they're characters in some fictional story. I mean, you can if you want to. And if that's what you believe, then that's what you believe. I don't have any words for you. But for those who are trying to get the most out of this book, look at David through the eyes of Jonathan when Jonathan is describing David, or when David is describing Jonathan. Get involved. Visualize yourself in the scene with them. Like, for example, when David was supposed to go hide in his cave, and Jonathan said, if my father cuts up at dinner tonight, I'll let you know by shooting an arrow, and tell him my arrow fetcher to go get it. Now keep going and go get it, and I'll let you know. So I visualize that, man. Get your brain involved. Get your functions. Get your learner functions involved in helping you decipher this book and extract as much as you can out of it. Control your brain and don't skim over or gloss over any information just because you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, look it up. If you can't look it up right now, mark it up so that later you can come back and look it up. Let me tell you something, man. It's nothing for me to spend like a week on all 5 of these chapters. So if you can't get it done in a day, you haven't failed nobody. You haven't failed yourself. This stuff takes some time. I mean, you got the rest of your life to study this book. What you can do, you can schedule out a regimen. You can bang out a regimen and say, okay, this is how many verses I'm gonna read today, then tomorrow, or how many I'm gonna read today, then next week, whatever fits into your schedule. Fit this thing into your schedule, but it's good to do it often and frequently, because once your brain learns how to do, your brain is going to learn how to do that. It's a learning curve, and the more you train it, the more you expose it to it, the easier it becomes. So if you did a Bible study Monday, the 2nd of February, and then don't do another one until like the 13th of March, it's going to take a while for your brain to warm up, and it's going to take a while for your brain to get there. I'm just telling you, you'll be able to have confidence in yourself, being able to understand this book. And also, too, there are some Bibles out there that will help you by providing notes of the information, archaeological information, historical information of the verse. And I know one that's excellent at that. And I don't trust any other version but this one version. It's called the Net Bible with Notes. Now, that one you're going to have to get online, because if you were to buy the net version with notes, trust me, it's going to cost you a couple $100, upwards to $1,000. All right, so that's not a lot of us don't have that kind of money laying around to buy a version of a Bible just because Wandell recommended it. And you don't know me from Adam's House Cat, so you can go to netbible.org and you can see it online with the notes. And the notes are so detailed sometimes you might not even understand it, because it talks about verb stems of Hebrew as to why they chose this word rather than that word to translate this word that you see in the verse. I mean, that's how detailed it gets. And a lot of people, it has over 60,000 notes in it. How about that? It's over 60,000. Is it 60,000 or 30,000? No, 10. Okay, anyway, back to this. Do not use the King James Version under no circumstances. If you do use the King James Version, use it as a complementary book to the version that you're using. Why do I say that? Because most of the Christian aids, when I say Christian aids or biblical aids, I say that they are created by Christians, like it or not. They're created by Christians. Strong's concordances, BDB, Brown, Driver, and Briggs. The concordances and the lexicons, and then the commentaries. Well, let me just say, for the King James Version, it's for the words, because the words in the King James Version are cataloged in the concordances. You know, if you grab your NIV and try to read that, and then try to look up that word in NIV, more than likely you're not going to find it in the concordance, because the concordance has cataloged King James words, or King James translation of words in it, so that if you look up saith, you can look up saith, and it has a page where all the places in the Bible that use the word saith, and you can find it that way. But it doesn't say saith in NIV. I think you get my point. So King James becomes helpful in that regard, to where you have a verse you're questioning, and then you want to know maybe what the Hebrew of this word is, but you can't find that word in the lexicon. Then go to that same verse in the King James, look it up there, and then the word that the King James is using, look that word up in the lexicon, and then you can find the Hebrew behind it. All right? So let's go to the next page. Step 3. Circle the verse numbers according to the color classification. All right? Now, I don't know if you guys can see over here in this example, or this is the page. This is actually a blank page. This is actually a blank page from my Bible, right? But what I did was I used circles from PowerPoint to circle the numbers so you can see. Just give you an example of what I'm talking about. And here's a color key. Red is for history or the past, ancient or memory. When by ancient, I mean ancient information, or when they're reflecting back on times beyond their own in the Bible. They'll do that. They'll talk about it. Or just by memories that they're reflecting on. All right. Orange is law, or tradition, or culture, or ethics, or just what they do as a people, why they do what they do as a people, the commandments that they're given, the laws, the ordinances, the statutes. Did I say commandments already? Commandments. That's what orange is for. So whenever I see orange, I know that's what's going down. And isolated by color helps me to remember, because these things are aiding the senses, and the more you can aid the senses, the more you can retain this stuff. I mean, because looking at the black and white page all the way through the whole duration of the book is boring. All right, I'm an artist at heart, so seeing colors, it helps me. It jumps out at me, and then it helps when I sight read the Bible too. How sometimes you go and you like, I know this information is in this chapter. I just don't know where. I don't remember the verse. And so when I get there, I'm looking at the colors. There it is. There it is. Because I know what I'm looking for is about law. That's orange. So that's about law. And it helps me find it like that. Yellow is for art, visual, maps, or geography. When I talk about, and he was this place and they were this place. I'll circle that verse in yellow if something else doesn't supersede that. And I'll talk about that a little later. Well, let me talk about it now because I'll forget later. Like, for example, if they're talking about a law, that thing is getting orange. That verse is going to get circled orange, not yellow, because yellow is not very important compared to the law. But if like we're talking about a certain region that they had just conquered, or the certain region that they had just come from, and it's talking about nothing else but that, then that thing is getting yellow. All right. Green, math, time, money, amount, and numbers. I'm just going to go through the colors because I can see right now it's going to take a long time to explain each one if I keep doing that. But the best thing I can say to do is study with me, and I can show you how you employ this system. Because what I'm going to do here pretty soon, after I do these 4 series of videos for the 1dellian Bible study method. Okay, after I do this, then I'm going to open up to do a corporate Bible book club study thing, right? Where all of us gather together in one place, and like maybe somewhere virtually, online somewhere. I just don't know I had a site to facilitate that, but I kind of lost interest in that site, so I'm going to have to create another one. Or in the meantime, we could find somewhere mutual to go online and then knock this out. And then, well, this is why I'm explaining this method, so that those who want to attend that can go back and look at these videos and understand the method we're going to use to try to gain the most out of the experience. All right. We're not going to do what Christians do, where they get together in a little circle. Everybody got a Bible in their lap. And I say, all right, let's turn here and let's talk about grace. And then they read the verse. Then they stop and says, and they stop it and say, well, what does that scripture mean to you? Gives a damn what it means to you. I don't care what it means to you. What does the scripture say? I'm more so focused on hermeneutics. I'm more so focused on author intention, audience relevance. Because we know one thing. Whoever wrote this book was not writing it to us. So since you're not writing it to us, this is not a letter from mommy. It doesn't matter what it means to me. It matters what the author intended it to mean. And I think a lot of us get away from how to read the Bible like that. How to read the Bible. Look, he is writing this to this dude. Now, the best thing to do is try to understand it from his perspective and the dude's perspective. Moving right along. So, light blue is for metaphysical occurrences. Science-defying occurrences. Divine or the supernatural. All right? Blue, dark blue, is for science. Practical application of science. Okay? Purple is for righteousness. Direct righteousness, being taught, or examples of righteousness. Like right there in this next example here, chapter 22. And David spoke to the Lord the words of the song on the day that the Lord had delivered him out of the land, of the hand of all his enemies, and out of the hand of Saul. Right? So I made that purple because I'm like, that is the righteous thing to do, to recognize God once he has delivered you. That's why that's purple, because David did a righteous thing. And when I'm looking for examples of righteousness, here, in verse 4, I will call upon the Lord, and I shall be saved from my enemies. Now, we got a situation where David is confronted with enemies. I'm not going to say directly confronted with enemies, but he has some enemies about, or he has some enemies he's concerned about. Now, the righteous thing to do would be to call upon the Lord, rather than get your boys and a few clubs and some broken glass and handle business yourself, right? I'm a little out of touch with time and what goes on now, so I don't know if people still use brass knuckles and clubs with nails in them. I just know when I was a child in the 80s, they did. Purple, righteousness. Okay, so pink, languages, all right? Languages, names, words, phrases. Why? Because pink is going to be for words you're going to want to later look up in Hebrew. All right? Let's go to the next page. Step 4. Here's a close-up of a verse. The same verse I just read. Here's a close-up of it. Underline words of significance in pink. So here's how it's going down, right? You're going to read this verse, right? Or chapter. Read this chapter. And as you read each verse, you're going to determine each verse at a time what color it should be. And by the color, you're going to categorize the information of that verse. Okay? So you're going to, okay, I just read this verse. I determined that verse is purple. It may not be purple for you. I'm not going to say you all have to derive at my conclusion. I'm saying that you have a color code system that where if this verse means something else to you, and I know I just spoke against that, but I'm just saying if the information you're focusing on in that verse is like, let's say David spoke to the Lord the words of this song. Right, spoke to the Lord the words of a song. Why don't you sing the song? But he spoke to the Lord the words. Okay, maybe the words he spoke became a song later. Right, on the day that the Lord had delivered him out of the hand of all his enemies. Hold on. You mean to tell me in one single day the Lord delivered David out of the hand of all his enemies? Ask yourself questions like this as you read, and then it makes you want to look up some of these words and say, oh, okay, well, I know I can't really trust the translations as well as I should, so let me try to see if I can get involved a little bit. Out of all of his enemies and out of the hand of Saul. So he did that all in one day. David had a lot of enemies. Well, maybe it was when Saul died, and no, couldn't have been that. Because the Philistines didn't. Anyway, so yeah, sometimes when you read stuff like this, it will give you clues as to when it happened by the information it gives you, right? Now that's a little bit advanced Bible study, but you need to be looking out for clues like that, right? And so anyway, so David spoke to the Lord, and so to you might want to focus on the delivering power of God to save you out of the hands of all your enemies. Maybe that might stand out to you. I'm just saying it's not what it means to you, but what stands out to you, what you get more of the meaning out of the verse. Because I want to focus on righteousness. Maybe you want to focus on the delivering power of God, and that floats your boat, and that helps you get through the day. You know what I mean? Because that may be why you reading the Bible. Me, I'm reading the Bible for information I can live. When I read it, because it can be many things to many different people because there's so much information in it. Some people may be distraught, stressed out, downtrodden. So anytime they see a verse where God is doing something for humanity, that excites them. It doesn't excite me so much, but when I see people being good to people and I see people treating God lovely or treating each other lovely, that stands out for me because that's what I'm reading the book for. That matters to me. So I hope that makes sense because I'm not I'm not trying to contradict myself. I'm just trying to explain what I mean by what I just said and what I didn't just say. All right, step 5. Step 5. We have another example of a verse. Not only have we colored the this verse doesn't have a verse number, so I circle or square out the initial cap, right? The initial cap. So anywhere next to it, you'll see the circle, the numbers are circled. So, and it says, and David spoke, same verse. Now you see the pink word underlining employed. I think you saw that in the last one too. Let me see. Let me go back up. Yeah, pink words. Underline words of significance in pink. I mean to go back to that. The words I want to know in Hebrew are pink. I want to know what song. Is that really the word for song? Is that really what that word means or should have been translated into? And I'm looking for something that's going to give me more depth to the verse, which is why I want to look that word up in Hebrew. Delivered. I want to look up delivered because I know sometimes the word delivered can mean something else, and translators will always translate. It could be 5 different words that mean delivered. And there could be 5 different words that are behind the word delivered, but they'll translate all 5 words as delivered when it could mean 5 different things, And I want to find out. Enemies. Out of all the hand of all his enemies. And like I said, that sounds phenomenal that in one day, God not only delivered him all of his enemies, and Saul, because I'm like, wait a minute. Saul was pretty early in David's career. And as David continued to live on, he incurred more enemies. You know what I'm saying? So I want to look up that word enemies because I think it might bring forth more understanding to help me cipher what I don't understand about that one verse. All right, so anyway, here's a verse with so step 5 is to underline plot thickeners. And like I said, you're going to do this verse by verse. So as I'm reading verse 1, I'm treating this one verse like this. I'm treating this one verse with this kind of treatment, right? And I underlined in purple the thing I thought that was righteous about this verse that made me want to make it purple. I want to understand. So I don't just go back and think the whole verse has to do with righteousness, but I underlined it to be more specific. Then the word song is in pink. On the day that the Lord had. On the day. Okay, the reason why that's red is because red is history. And so this is going back in time, I would think. So it's historical information, right? delivered, pink again, him out of the hand of all. All is an amount. All is an amount that I want to have my attention drawn back to. So green is for amounts, green is for time, green is for money, green is for numbers. His enemies, pink, because I want to understand what enemies means, and out of the hand of Saul. So this is historical information that lines up with a time period. Out of the hand of Saul. So I don't know if that makes sense, but once you start treating a verse like this, and you get used to it after a while, it just starts coming naturally. Like you can look at this example. This is an actual page out my Bible on the right hand side here. Where you see the words underlined in pink, Raiders, Beth Horon, Zebulon, Smith, Madak, plowshare. I want to look those words up. I want to know what they are in Hebrew, not only to strengthen my Hebrew vocabulary, but because I think it might give more depth and meaning to the verse itself. And then you can see some words are underlined. Whole clauses are underlined. Sometimes whole verses are underlined. There was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan. And I thought that was historical information that needed to be highlighted. I'm like, wow, there was a time when there was no sword found in, I'm not going to say in the land of Israel, okay, because I know that the Philistines at one point in time had outlawed smiths to be an occupation in Israel because they did not want them to have weapons. As a matter of fact, you go right back up to verse 15. It says, now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. All the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, we do not want the Hebrews to make swords and spears. Right? There you go. Next. Okay. Step 6. Name the entire chapter. I don't know if you can see it right there, but above verse 12, it's in my handwriting. I've named the entire chapter. I gave a name or title, my own, to the entire chapter. You know what that does? That forces you to use your comprehension skills, to use your brain to come up with a title for this chapter for your memory, for you to remember later. That's why you're doing that, okay? And to isolate topics, all right? I don't know if you can really see it that well, but if you see brackets, you can see on this page there are brackets. They're brackets that identify where the topics are. And then you can make out the subtopics. If you see the dot and then another dot, okay, let me see. If there's a dot here, then there's a dot here, and there's a line that connects those dots. Those are subtopics. There's another one here, another one here, and there's a line that connects them. That's a subtopic. And here's the bracket right here. The bracket is on the outside. So so far, within that one bracket, there's one subtopic, there's two subtopics, there's three subtopics, 4, and it probably continues to the next page. But as I isolate and demarcate those topics, I also name the topic. Okay? I name the topic, what this topic is about, in my own words. This helps you, it helps your brain to put all the information together that you just obtained into your own words. Now this is where it does get, you use your own words for this stuff for you. You have to figure out what you're going to call this. What, not necessarily what you got out of it, but what is this talking about? What's the highlights of this information? And then a subtopic, so you can isolate that. Because later on, I guarantee you, this is going to come in handy. It's going to help you remember Scripture. It's going to help you remember what entire chapters are about. Because when you're away from the Bible, you're going to have to retain this information somehow. And if you remember, oh, you know what? Exodus chapter 20 is where the 10 Commandments are found. How do you know that? How did you know that? Probably from constant exposure to chapter 20 of Exodus. You keep going back there all the time, right? But, yeah. So moving right along. I mean, that is the final step. No, there's no moving right along. That's the final step to the manual phase. Okay, and then so in the next video, I'll come back and I'll talk about the digital phase, where you take all that information we just went over and you place it in this grid. Okay. My God, I hope the audio, hope the video is still working when I go back to Facebook and see. Okay, good. All right, so is there any questions while you guys have me? I'll answer some questions. And what time is it? It's 1:26. Oh my God. Okay, I got a few minutes. To answer some questions. And also keep in mind there's a delay, so I won't see the stuff right away, as if I was an actual Facebook Live. As if I was an actual Facebook Live. I have a delay because I'm using this software. Well, that's it. I hope somebody got something out of it. The video will be available on my profile. I'm going to also upload it to YouTube. So if you ever want to go back and check on that, and if there's a part to it that you forgot about, or that you need re-explanation to, and we need to watch the video, you have access to it. I just put it like that. Thanks, Terrence. Appreciate it, man. Well, this was brought to you by Swordsmiths. I don't know if you guys know what a swordsmith is, but I'll talk about it some other time, I guess. I'm going to do some laundry. Y'all take care. Love you guys.